A bottle of shampoo sitting in a shower looks so normal that it almost disappears. It feels like one of those items that must have always existed in some form, as if every generation had its own easy way to wash away oil, sweat, and smell. But hair has always been a problem people had to manage, and for most of history, there was no neat liquid, no soft foam, and no printed promise sitting on a shelf. If forgotten stories hiding inside ordinary routines are your kind of thing, subscribe now, because hair care gets much stranger the further back we go. The basic problem was simple. Human scalps produce oil. That oil helps protect the skin and hair, but it also catches dust, smoke, ash, and whatever else is floating through daily life. Add sweat, dead skin, and the smells of cooking fires, animals, crowded homes, workshops, and long travel, and clean hair becomes a real challenge. This was not only about appearance, it was also about comfort. An itchy scalp, tangled hair, trapped dirt, and lice could turn grooming into something people thought about every day. That matters because older people were not unaware of cleanliness. They did not wake up and simply accept filthy hair as normal. They brushed it, covered it, tied it up, combed it, scented it, rubbed things into it, and tried all kinds of methods to keep it under control. The idea that people in the past were just dirty until modern products arrived misses the point. They were dealing with the same body humans still have now. They just had different tools, different habits, and different limits. One of the biggest limits was water itself. In many places, getting enough water to wash hair well was harder than modern people realize. Heating water took time and fuel, carrying it took effort. Private bathrooms did not exist in the form we know now. Even when water was available, washing long hair often meant a slow routine instead of a quick step in a shower. In colder seasons, a full wash could be uncomfortable enough that people stretched the time between washes and relied more on maintenance in between. Does that sound dirty, or does it sound practical for the world they lived in? Hair texture mattered too. Thick hair, curly hair, long hair, tightly bound hair, and hair kept under head coverings all needed different care. Climate changed everything. A dusty, dry region created one kind of problem. A damp, smoky town created another. People living near sea air, animal pens, fireplaces, or busy streets were not fighting the same battle. That is why there was never one universal old-world answer. There were many. At first, the most obvious method was water alone. Rinsing could remove loose dirt, sweat, and some smell. Fingers helped work the scalp. Cloths helped wipe away grime. But water by itself did not solve the whole problem, especially once scalp oil mixed with soot or fine dust. That pushed people toward another habit that sounds simple but mattered a great deal: combing. A good comb was not just for style, it was a cleaning tool. Fine combs could pull dirt, flakes, and insects out of the hair. Repeated combing also spread scalp oil from the roots down through the length of the hair. That could make hair look less greasy at the scalp and help protect the ends from drying out. Brushing and combing were doing some of the work that modern washing now handles. In other words, older hair care was often less about one dramatic wash and more about constant upkeep. Scent played a role as well. Herbs, flowers, oils, and fragrant plant materials were used to make hair smell better and feel fresher. That did not always mean the hair was deeply clean in the modern sense, but smell has always shaped what people think of as cleanliness. In many societies, clean enough meant controlled, presentable, and not offensive to others. That is not so different from modern life as people like to imagine. Then there were absorbent materials. Earthy powders, fine clays, and plant matter could help pull oil away from the scalp and hair. That idea may sound unusual, but it is not far from dry shampoo now. The format changed. The logic did not. When people found substances that soaked up grease and could be brushed out, they were solving a real problem with what they had on hand. The strange part is that all of this existed in a world where hair could also carry social meaning. Clean, orderly hair suggested control, discipline, status, modesty, beauty, or health, depending on the time and place. A neglected head could send the opposite message. So hair care was never only a private habit done for comfort, it was also public. Other people saw it, other people judged it, and that pressure pushed people to keep experimenting. What makes this story interesting is that the old methods were not random guesses from people who knew no better. Many were rough early attempts at the same goal modern shampoo serves: remove excess oil, deal with smell, make hair manageable, and leave the person feeling presentable again. Some methods were mild, some were harsh, some worked better than outsiders would expect, some likely made things worse. And that opens the door to the next part of the story, because once people started using clay, herbs, oils, ashes, and other mixtures, once people moved beyond plain water and combing, hair care became a trial and error search for substances that could do one very specific job: pull dirt and oil away from the scalp without ruining the hair completely. They did not describe it in the language of modern cosmetic chemistry, but many old routines were built on careful observation. People knew that certain materials absorbed grease, some plants produced a light cleansing effect, and some mixtures stripped the hair so harshly that the cure could feel almost as bad as the problem. One of the oldest and most practical solutions was clay. In different parts of the world, people used fine clays or earths to deal with oily hair and dirty scalps. The basic reason was simple: clay can absorb oil. If worked into the hair and then rinsed or brushed away, it could take some of that grease with it. That made sense in places where hair picked up dust or where washing with heavy soap was not ideal. Some clays also had a smoothing effect when used carefully, leaving hair less slick at the roots and easier to handle. What sounds odd in a modern bathroom would not have sounded odd at all in a world where useful cleaning materials often came straight from the ground. Plants were another major answer. People across many cultures used herbs, roots, leaves, and flowers in rinses or infusions for the scalp and hair. Some were chosen for scent, some were used because they seemed soothing, others actually had mild cleansing properties. One of the best-known examples is soapwort, a plant that contains natural compounds called saponines. Those compounds can create a gentle lather in water, not a thick modern foam, but enough to help loosen dirt and oil. For someone trying to clean hair without the harshness of ordinary soap, that kind of plant would have been valuable. That is one of the easiest old methods to understand, because it points straight toward the future. Long before people bought shampoo in a bottle, they were already searching for ingredients that could lift away grime more gently than rough household soap. They did not yet have the product category, but they were moving toward the same goal. Other herbal rinses may not have cleaned as strongly, yet they still served a purpose. Rosemary, lavender, chamomile, nettle, and many other plants appeared in grooming traditions for a reason. Some helped with smell. Some may have calmed irritated skin. Some probably earned their reputation because people liked the feel of the hair afterward. In a world without modern testing, a treatment that made hair easier to comb, less offensive in smell, or more pleasant to touch could easily become part of a lasting routine. Oil may seem like a strange thing to add when the problem is oily hair, but it also had a place. That only sounds backward if you think of hair cleaning as a one-step process. In many older routines, it was not. Oils could loosen stuck dirt, soften tangles, protect the hair shaft, and help with dryness caused by weather or harsher cleansers. Then combing or wiping could remove some of the excess. This was especially useful for hair that became brittle when stripped too hard. In other words, older people were not only trying to clean hair, they were trying to keep it usable. Then came one of the harsher answers: ash. Fireplace ash and ash-based mixtures were used in many cleaning traditions because ash can create an alkaline solution when mixed with water. Alkaline means the mixture can break down grease. That made it useful for washing many things, including hair in some cases. But this is where old hair care could become rough. Something strong enough to cut through oil could also irritate the scalp and leave hair dry, coarse, or damaged if used too often or mixed badly. Still, people kept using these methods because they worked better than doing nothing. That is an important point. Modern people often judge old routines only by what they lacked. The better question is what problem they solved. If you lived in a smoky house, cooked over fire, walked dusty roads, and had no mild bottled cleanser, a clay wash or an ash rinse might have felt like a very reasonable answer. Would you rather have slightly rough hair or hair loaded with grease and grit? The line between cleaning and damaging was thin. That is why grooming tools mattered so much. A person could not rely on one wash to do everything. Combs, brushes, cloths, oils, coverings, and repeated maintenance all worked together. Some methods absorbed oil, some masked smell, some protected hair after harsher treatment. Some simply made it easier to untangle and manage. The real system was not a single product, it was a routine. Hair texture also changed the results. A mixture that one person found useful might be a disaster for someone else. Thick, coarse, curly, straight, long, short, braided, or tightly dressed hair all responded differently. Local water also mattered. Hard water, soft water, mineral-rich water, and scarce water changed what people could do and what they preferred. That is why old hair cleaning traditions varied so much from place to place. They were shaped by environment as much as by belief. Some old methods never vanished completely. The logic survived. Powders that absorb oil still exist. Herbal rinses still exist. Scalp oils still exist. The big difference is that modern products are packaged, refined, and sold with the promise of convenience. The core idea, though, is older than most people suspect. But even when these methods worked, they did not solve the entire problem. Hair was never only about comfort and cleanliness. It also carried meaning. The moment appearance, smell, fashion, and status entered the picture, hair care became more than a practical habit. It became something other people judged. Once hair care moved beyond the simple question of how to remove dirt, it became tied to something much harder to measure: what kind of person your hair made you look like. Hair sits out in the open. Other people see it before they know anything else about you. That made it a social signal long before modern advertising turned it into a product category. Clean-looking hair could suggest discipline, health, order, beauty, modesty, wealth, or refinement. Hair that looked neglected could suggest the opposite, even when the difference had less to do with effort than with time, climate, or money. That social pressure changed the whole meaning of washing. A person was not only trying to remove grease, they were trying to appear respectable. In many times and places, that did not always mean hair had to be freshly washed in the modern sense. It often meant the hair needed to be controlled, arranged, covered, scented, powdered, or dressed in a way that signaled care. A head of hair could pass the public test without matching what a modern person would call fully clean. Class made a huge difference here. Wealthier households had more options. They could afford better combs, finer linens, imported oils, perfumes, and time-consuming grooming routines. In some cases, they also had servants who helped wash, brush, powder, braid, or maintain elaborate styles. Poorer people did not necessarily care less about their hair. They often had fewer tools, less privacy, less spare water, less fuel to heat that water, and less time to spend on long grooming rituals. That gap matters because hair standards can look universal when they are really built around what only some people can afford. Fashion also pushed people in directions that were not always about cleaning. In certain periods, hair powder became part of the answer. Powder could reduce visible oil, improve appearance, and carry fragrance. That made it useful even when it did not truly wash the scalp. Pomades and oils could shape the hair and hold styles in place, though they could also trap dust and old residue over time. Wigs and hairpieces changed the whole situation again. In some societies, especially in elite settings, a person might manage appearance through coverings, false hair, and styling systems that reduced the need to constantly wash natural hair. That sounds strange now, but it followed a basic logic. If washing was difficult, if harsh cleansers could damage hair, and if appearances mattered, then a system that controlled how hair looked and smelled could be more attractive than frequent deep washing. Does that seem lazy, or does it sound like people were solving the problem that mattered most in public life? Head coverings mattered too. Caps, scarves, wraps, hats, and veils did more than signal religion, profession, gender, or status. They also protected hair from dirt and smoke, concealed bad hair days long before the phrase existed, and reduced exposure to wind and grime. Sometimes the smartest way to manage hair was not to wash it more often, but to keep it from getting filthy in the first place. The smell issue never went away. Hair holds scent easily. Smoke from fireplaces, cooking grease, sweat, city air, animal smells, and crowded indoor living all settled into it. That is one reason fragrant oils and powders remained important. A pleasant scent could stand in for deeper cleanliness in social settings. It could also make the person feel more presentable, which matters more than people sometimes admit. Cleanliness has always been partly physical and partly psychological. Urban life made everything harder. As towns and cities grew, hair picked up soot, smoke, dust, and odors at a scale that earlier rural settings did not always produce. Industrial areas made the problem worse. A person living around coal smoke and crowded streets faced a different kind of grime than someone living closer to open air. More dirt in the environment meant stronger pressure for hair care that looked and smelled effective, even when the available methods were still limited. This is where soap entered the picture in a more obvious way, but soap was not the perfect answer people might assume. Soap existed long before modern shampoo, and it could certainly clean. The trouble was that many soaps were harsh on hair, especially when used repeatedly. Hair often became rough, dull, tangled, or difficult to manage. Soap could solve the grease problem and create a new one. That is why older hair care remained such a patchwork. People kept mixing methods because no single answer felt ideal. Public image made that patchwork even more necessary. Hair had to look right, smell right, sit right, and fit the standards of the time. In one period, that might mean smooth and covered. In another, powdered and dressed. In another, soft and glossy. The desired result kept changing, but the pressure stayed the same. Hair was part of how people were read by others. That is one reason modern people often misunderstand older grooming. They imagine a straight line from dirt to cleanliness, as if history was simply waiting for shampoo to appear. The reality was more complicated. People were balancing hygiene, beauty, status, available materials, and daily labor all at once. They were not failing to invent shampoo out of ignorance. They were living inside social systems where appearance could be managed in many other ways. Still, those old systems had limits. Strong soaps could be rough. Powders and perfumes could hide more than they solved. Urban grime kept getting worse. People wanted hair that not only looked acceptable in public, but also felt cleaner, softer, and easier to wash on a regular basis. And that growing pressure set the stage for the final turning point, when chemistry, manufacturing, changing bathing habits, and smart marketing finally turned hair washing from a complicated routine into a familiar product. For a long time, hair cleaning remained a compromise. People could rinse, comb, powder, oil, scent, scrub, or wash with rougher materials, but no single method gave them everything at once. One routine helped with grease, another improved smell. Another protected the hair from drying out, another made it look acceptable in public. What people did not yet have was a widely available product built specifically for hair that felt easier, gentler, and modern enough to fit into ordinary life. The word shampoo itself has an interesting history. It traces back through colonial contact with South Asia, where the term was connected to massage and rubbing the body or scalp with oils and preparations. Over time, the word shifted in meaning as it entered English use and became associated more directly with washing the hair. That matters because it shows the product did not appear out of nowhere. The language, the practice, and the commercial idea formed through contact, adaptation, and changing habits. At first, hair washing with specialized preparations was not yet an ordinary home routine for everyone. In many cases, it was connected to barbers, hairdressers, and more formal grooming spaces. A person might have their hair treated, cleaned, massaged, or styled by someone else, rather than reaching for a mass-produced bottle in a private shower. That stage is easy to miss now because modern life makes shampoo feel personal and automatic. But it had to travel through a world of service, status, and specialist care before it became a household default. The bigger shift came when chemistry improved and manufacturers started creating products that worked better on hair than many ordinary soaps did. This was a major turning point. Traditional soap could clean, but it often left hair dull, rough, and difficult to manage. Specialized hair cleansers aimed to solve that problem by removing oil without punishing the hair so badly afterward. That sounds simple, but it changed everything. Once people could imagine washing their hair more often without wrecking it, the routine became easier to normalize. Water systems and bathing habits were changing at the same time. More homes gradually gained better access to plumbing, heated water, and private washing spaces. That gave people something earlier generations often lacked: convenience. A routine that once demanded hauling water, heating it, and setting aside serious time could slowly become something closer to regular personal care. Shampoo did not conquer the bathroom on chemistry alone. It also needed the bathroom itself to become more modern. This is where industry and advertising stepped in. Manufacturers were not just selling a cleanser, they were selling a new standard. Hair was no longer presented as something you cleaned when absolutely necessary with whatever method was available. It became something you were expected to maintain with the right product, the right schedule, and the right result. Clean hair became shinier in the ads, softer in the promises, healthier in the language, and more closely tied to self-respect, beauty, and social success. That mattered because habits do not spread only when something works. They spread when people begin to feel that not using the new thing says something about them. Once shampoo was framed as modern, hygienic, and desirable, the older patchwork system started to look old-fashioned, inconvenient, or inferior. People did not just buy shampoo because it cleaned hair. They bought it because it fit the new idea of what proper daily life should look like. Would everyone in the past have embraced frequent shampooing immediately? Probably not. To someone used to stretching washes, brushing the scalp carefully, using oils, or managing hair through coverings and styling, the modern expectation of regular washing might have looked excessive, wasteful, or unnecessary. But once the product became easy to buy and easy to use, resistance weakened. Convenience can change habits faster than argument. The product category also grew quickly. Once shampoo became normal, one bottle was no longer enough for the market. New versions appeared for dandruff, babies, oily scalps, dry hair, damaged hair, colored hair, stronger fragrance, milder fragrance, and later even water-free freshening through dry shampoo. In a strange way, the older world never disappeared completely. Some of its logic survived inside modern packaging. Dry shampoo still borrows from the old idea of absorbing oil without a full wash. Scalp oils still reflect the older belief that hair sometimes needs protection, not stripping. Herbal shampoos still trade on the long memory of plant-based care. The labels changed, but many old instincts stayed alive. That is part of what makes this history so interesting. Shampoo feels like a clean break from the past, but it is really a refined version of much older experiments. People had already learned that oil could be managed, smell could be masked or improved, dirt could be loosened, and the scalp needed different treatment from fabric or dishes. Modern chemistry organized those lessons into a product that was easier to trust, easier to repeat, and easier to sell. And once that happened, shampoo became one of those objects that turned invisible through success. People stopped thinking about the long struggle behind it. The bottle in the bathroom stopped looking like the end result of centuries of trial, and started looking like something that had always belonged there. But it never really did. It arrived through a long chain of discomfort, improvisation, social pressure, trade, chemistry, grooming labor, and changing ideas about what it means to be clean. Clay, herbs, ash, oils, combs, powders, perfumes, and harsh soaps were all steps in that process. Some worked better than modern people assume. Some were rougher than most people would tolerate now. All of them tell the same story. The human need to keep the body manageable, presentable, and under control has always been there, even when the tools were messy. So, the next time you squeeze shampoo into your hand, it helps to remember that it is not just a bathroom product. It is a polished answer to a very old problem. If this changed how you see something as ordinary as washing your hair, subscribe and leave a like. And in the comments, tell me which everyday object you want me to trace back through history next. Because some of the most familiar things in a home carry the longest stories.